Welcome to the Full Strength Father podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Corper, and founder of Full Strength Father. Today is episode 8, and we're going to talk about the first element of our purpose. In previous episodes, I've talked about the code of the Full Strength Father, starting in episode 3, leading through episode 7. The episodes prior to that, episode 1 and 2, I talk about how the code and the purpose came to be. And so, as a natural flow of subject matter, we now land on our purpose, which is threefold: lead with integrity, provide with consistency, and protect at all costs. So we're going to talk about leading with integrity today. There's some insights from my study and experiences in this area. And to preface this conversation, I just want to say that as a father, sharing this, I've felt very inadequate as I've published this podcast, because I realize that all of these areas are things that I am currently working on and pursuing and very imperfect in. But having these standards, having these things written has been life-changing for me, because I have a reference point that I can look at daily and see how I'm measuring up and make informed improvements as a father. So this element of the purpose reads, quote, "My purpose is to lead myself and my family with integrity. I lead by example. I do not ask of my family that which I am unwilling to do myself. I am adaptable, humble, and do not allow my ego to rule my decisions. I am decisive and take strategic action. I lead, teach, and serve with love and empathy. I actively create experiences that foster growth and connection. I know that to lead with integrity in fatherhood is a lifelong call to selfless service and unrelenting personal improvement." What does it mean to lead with integrity as a father? So that word, it's a very powerful word, and we could talk for multiple episodes about what integrity is. But it's a quality that as fathers we should strive to embody in our role. Within the context of fatherhood, I believe integrity can be defined as the adherence to a set of values, principles, and ethical standards that guide our actions and our decisions in our relationship with our spouse, our significant other, and our children. It's important to then go a level deeper and say, okay, so what does it look like when we have integrity? What are some descriptors of that? And I believe that fathers that have integrity are honest and dependable and trustworthy. That fathers with integrity model good behavior to their children and others, and they hold themselves accountable for their actions. A father with integrity strives to be consistent in their words and their actions, both in public and in private, so that their children can trust and rely on them, and their spouse as well. They also have a strong sense of responsibility towards their families, and they work very hard to provide for their needs, both emotionally and materially. So a father, having integrity as a father, also involves being willing to admit when we are wrong and taking responsibility for our mistakes. Fathers who demonstrate this level of integrity, or demonstrate integrity in this way, by doing so, teach their children very important lessons about accountability, humility, and the importance of actually learning from our mistakes. And ultimately, I believe that fathers who demonstrate this quality of integrity are able to create a secure and stable environment for their families, which fosters a deeper level of trust and respect. And by modeling integrity as fathers, we can help our families become responsible and ethical people, both our children primarily. And we can set an example and inspire our spouse or significant other to do the same. So really, it's interesting because that leading with integrity, it's what I've realized is that if I focus on leading myself with integrity first, then the natural byproduct of that is that my family will experience the things that I just described, which is very powerful. So we start with ourselves. The second sentence of the code is I lead by example. And the third says, I do not ask of my family that which I am unwilling to do myself. There's a section in a book that I love called Leadership Strategy and Tactics that relates to this quote. It's by Jocko Willink. Great book. Very, very much relates to fatherhood. So this section is on page 107 titled Picking Up Brass. And I'll quote the book. Quote, leaders might be above their subordinates in the rank structure. So as I read this, just interchange the word father with interchange the word leaders with father and the word subordinates with family members. Leaders might be above their subordinates in the rank structure, but they are not actually superior to those below them in the chain of command. And this means leaders must respect them. It also means there is no job too small or menial for a leader to do. In the SEAL teams, we shoot a lot of weapons on vast, highly dynamic ranges that cover dozens of square miles on land. When we shoot, the weapons leave behind brass shell casings by the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Because brass has value, can be recycled, and because the training ranges must be kept clean, when a SEAL platoon finishes a block of training, it then has to pick up all those brass casings. This is a pretty miserable task and usually takes a couple of days of gutting through high temperatures in the desert heat and crawling around on your knees and picking up shell casings. It's a menial task that requires zero skill and no leadership whatsoever. Because of that, it is very easy for a SEAL leader to leave the menial task of picking up brass to his subordinates. There is always administrative work that needs to be completed, meetings that need to be attended, and future operations that need to be planned. But leaving the brass for others to pick up is usually not the right call for a leader. I always picked up brass with my troops. Not only did it display that no job was above me, it was also a good time to interact with the frontline SEALs, bond with the subordinate leaders and troops, and observe how everyone interacts with one another. It also revealed who on the team was slacking. Leaders who chose not to pick up brass missed out on all of that. Sure, they may have attended yet another meeting in the vast pool of meetings. They might have finished their administrative work or gotten some additional sleep, but they didn't build relationships with their troops. They didn't see how their troops interacted, and they certainly didn't prove their humility to their team. And he goes on in this section and gives more insight on that. But I love that example. That struck me because as fathers, if we're able to build awareness about those menial tasks around the house, those things that need to be done, and we dive into them with our children, with our spouse, significant other, it just allows us to experience what Jocko's talking about there with our families, that we can build a bond with them through doing those tasks. And we essentially, it's very important that we remember that as fathers, even though we are in a leadership position, that what that means is that we are servants. And that's encompassed in the last sentence of the purpose. I know that to lead with integrity in fatherhood is a lifelong call to selfless service and unrelenting personal improvement. And so we can demonstrate that by serving them in these small, simple areas. Doesn't mean that we enable or do it for them, but that we are involved at that level. It can be easy sometimes, at least for me in my life, where I'm working really hard and I just sort of silo some of those day-to-day tasks around the house to my wife and children instead of taking ownership of that and leading out with a positive, uplifting attitude. And so as I've worked on that, it's really powerful to watch what happens because, for example, if I'm really tired after a long day and the living room's got toys all over it and it's just kind of messy. We have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old right now. And I'm like, I just got to get ready for tomorrow, get my food ready, go do my thing, plan. And I just go through my things and then go to bed, after we do our little routine, and I leave that there versus the other thing that I've tried, because I've done that. And it's not like it's, destroying the family or anything like that, but it puts a little bit more work on my wife before she has to go to bed if she's going to be picking that up, or it's just not going to get picked up. And the next morning, the living room won't be organized, and kind of sets the tone for the next day. But I've also taken that, I've been intentional in noticing that and flipped on some, uplifting, like fun music, and gone with the boys and said, all right, let's do this in 10 minutes. Let's get this thing picked up. Let's rock and roll. Come on. It's going to be fun. Get them all excited, get them all wound up, and then we just blast through and clean it. And what's cool is that teaches them, my sons, to pick up, number one, but then also for my wife, it relieves a burden on her. And for me, it only took me an extra 5-10 minutes. Now, that's just an example of, quote unquote, picking up brass with a family. And I'm sure there's so many ways that we can do that outside of just cleaning up toys, but keep that in mind. I think that's really powerful. So I'm going to talk about the next sentence, which says, I'm adaptable, humble, and do not allow my ego to rule my decisions. There's a lot there. Now, ego with fatherhood was something I kind of spent some time learning about, because what I questioned, like, what is ego and how does it relate to fatherhood? So what I found is that within the context of fatherhood, ego refers to our sense of self-importance, self-esteem, and self-image, and it encompasses our beliefs about ourselves, our abilities, and our role in the family, which initially I just thought of ego as a negative thing, right? But, and I might need to revise this element of the purpose and with actually describing what type of ego ruling our decisions, because what I realize is that there's healthy ego and unhealthy ego. So it's important for us to suppress, or not suppress, but eliminate our unhealthy ego and fuel the positive, healthy ego. And it's important to, let's see, sorry, I just got a notification. Should probably put my computer on focus. Apologies for that. That's a rookie mistake as a beginner podcaster. So healthy and unhealthy ego. Our ego affects how we approach fatherhood, right? That's one thing that I discovered, is that if we're unintentional about our ego, it's very easy for unhealthy ego to develop. So unhealthy ego can manifest in a variety of ways, but I'm going to give 5 ways that unhealthy ego manifests for us as fathers, and then I'll talk about healthy ego. So here's some common signs that our ego is unhealthy. 1, overcompensating for perceived inadequacies. A father with an unhealthy ego may feel a sense of inadequacy or insecurity about his parenting abilities. And to compensate for those feelings, he may try to exert excessive control over his children or spouse or significant other, and overcompensate by being overly permissive. So it can manifest in either of those ways. He may be unwilling to listen to his children's opinions or needs, or he may try to build their affection with gifts or other forms of material support. 2, refusing to seek help or advice. An unhealthy ego can lead a father to believe that he should know everything about parenting, and that seeking help or advice is a sign of weakness. This can make it difficult for him to learn new parenting skills, new relationship skills, or to ask for support from others when he needs it. This can create a cycle of frustration and also isolation, which can be detrimental to both the father and his family. For me, I think I've been able to see that in my own life, that I have a tendency to isolate myself from other men. And it's funny because I wouldn't have initially recognized that as unhealthy ego, but I do think that is something that I need to really work on, is opening up and sharing my difficulties with other men and moving out of isolation. And I think a lot of men can relate to that, a lot of fathers. So that's important. That was something that, as I studied this, I didn't quite realize what was going on in my own life. The third is becoming defensive or dismissive. A father with an unhealthy ego may become defensive or dismissive when faced with criticism or challenges in his parenting style or relationship style. So this definitely can relate to our relationship with our spouse or significant other and our children if they're older. But think about that. Are we getting defensive or dismissive when we're faced with criticism, or are we welcoming it and using it as fuel for growth? He may feel personally attacked or threatened by any suggestions for improvement, which can lead to arguments, tension, and further disconnection from the family. Fourth, viewing his children as extensions of himself. A father with unhealthy ego can it can shift his view of his children and turn it into an extension of himself rather than his children being individuals with their own needs and desires. He may feel threatened by his children's independence or accomplishments, or he may see them primarily as a reflection of his own success or failure as a parent. And fifth, engaging in power struggles. A father with an unhealthy ego may engage in power struggles with his children, seeking to assert his authority and control over them. This can also manifest as arguing, yelling, raising your voice, using physical force to get his way. Such behavior can be very dangerous to both the father-child relationship and the relationship with the spouse or significant other, and it can severely damage a child's sense of self-worth, autonomy, confidence, and all those other positive things that come from giving power and choice and guiding rather than dictating. Okay, so as I read those, maybe think about, are any of those things showing up in your life? Because as I read it, I'm like, oh my goodness, there are definitely some key things that I'm pulling from there that I realize that my unhealthy ego has taken over in some way, and that helps me have insight into how I can change. So now let's go to the other side of the equation with what a healthy ego looks like. So we have this contrast. So there's six areas that I'll share about what a healthy ego may look like for a father. First is accepting and embracing his strengths and weaknesses. So a father with a healthy ego is self-aware and recognizes his strengths and weaknesses as a parent. He's not afraid to acknowledge areas where he needs to improve and is open to learning new skills and strategies to become a better parent. 2, valuing and prioritizing his relationship with his spouse and children. A father with a healthy ego recognizes the importance of his relationship with his children, with his spouse, and makes those relationships a priority. This father is emotionally available, communicates openly and honestly with his children, with his spouse, and actively seeks to build a strong bond with them. And that really ties into another sentence in that purpose, which says, I actively create experiences that foster growth and connection. So that's evidence of a healthy ego. Third, being secure in his role as a parent. A father with a healthy ego is confident in his ability to provide for his family and is secure in his role as a parent. He is not threatened by his children's independence. He's not threatened by their accomplishments, and he supports them in pursuing their own goals and interests. And additionally, a father with a healthy ego is secure in his role as a spouse, in his role in his relationship with his significant other, because he's going to encourage independence. He's going to encourage accomplishments of his significant other. And that fosters a sense of teamwork and growth that's extremely powerful when we are secure in ourselves. The fourth thing that I'll discuss here as far as a healthy ego is concerned is being willing to seek help and support. So an unhealthy ego manifests in being unwilling to seek those things. A healthy ego manifests in being willing to do that. A father with a healthy ego recognizes that parenting is a challenge and constantly evolving. It's a constantly evolving role. And this father's not afraid to seek help and support when he needs it. He's open to feedback, seeks advice from other parents or professionals, consumes content that helps him understand his role and deepen his understanding of what he needs to do to be successful, and is willing to make changes to improve his parenting. Isn't that powerful? So a healthy ego is going to help us be growth oriented. And that ties into the last sentence of this purpose. I know that to lead with integrity in fatherhood is a lifelong call to selfless service and unrelenting personal improvement. 5, Encouraging his children's autonomy and independence is a manifestation of a healthy ego. Autonomy, independence, choice. That's what a true leader is going to do. Um, so a father with a healthy ego will recognize that his children are individuals and that their own needs and desires, they have their own. They have their own needs and desires. He supports their autonomy and independence and encourages them to make their own choices and provides guidance and support when needed. And this is something that's so challenging, I think. Even with younger children right now, 5 and 2, it's so easy to just be lazy and dictate or just say, no, don't do that. It takes a lot more work to get down on their level and show them the choices in front of them and describe what may happen and then allow them to choose. Now, granted, with really young kids, we obviously, there are times that we really have to lay down the law to keep them safe. And that may also apply as kids get older. So we have to know that boundary, that line. But generally speaking, with so many opportunities for choice, if we allow our kids to learn how to make quality decisions, then oh my goodness, like the positive benefits of that are just innumerable. 6, being flexible and adaptable is another way that a healthy ego manifests as a father. A father with a healthy ego is able to adapt to changing circumstances and is flexible in his parenting style. He's able to adjust his approach to meet the unique needs of each of his children and is willing to try new strategies and techniques to improve his parenting. So are you seeing a theme here? Are you starting to see the difference between a healthy and unhealthy ego and how that manifests in fatherhood? And I hope that you're seeing some ways that you are doing well and other ways that you may improve in those areas, things that hopefully some things have clarified as they have for me. And so an unhealthy ego, if that is ruling our decisions, then you can extrapolate what's going to happen with your family and with your relationships over time. They're going to deteriorate. They're going to get off course, weaken. You'll have a lot of issues arise if that unhealthy ego is ruling. Whereas on the flip side, if a healthy ego is expressed through these ways I listed and more, your family will be growing closer together, more resilient to challenge, and more loving, and it will just blossom. And so we are, in a sense, gardeners or cultivators of our family. And we have to make sure that the soil is fertile, that there's water, sunlight, all of these things to nourish that growth. And we have to let our families grow, get out of their way, give them all the tools and the environment to do that. And then naturally the opportunity that growth happens is much more likely and that things really flourish. So, just in conclusion, I want to talk a little bit about actively creating experiences that foster growth and connection. I had an experience yesterday with my sons where I've been reading a book called The Last Child in the Woods. I believe that's the title. And it was published, I think, in 2007. It's talking about the relationship that children have with nature and how it's changed over the last few generations from the early 1900s till now. And anyways, it inspired me to go out and just let my boys experience nature. It's not that we don't. We're outside all the time. I can talk more about kind of our routines and stuff as we go, but I wanted to just create a unique experience for them. So we went out into the mountains and I said, hey guys, let's build a fort. Some of the videos we like watching on YouTube occasionally are bushcraft videos of people building forts. And so I said, all right, let's get a plan in place. What do you guys want to do? And so we got my 5-year-old, my 2-year-old running around, picking up rocks, putting them in a big pile. I'm carrying some bigger stones, putting them over there. They're grabbing branches. They're doing all this stuff, getting dirty, just digging through stuff, finding bugs, all the things that come with building a fort out in the mountains. So we got these piles. We were underneath this amazing tree that was, I don't know what type of tree it was, but it made this large canopy, and then all the branches, thick branches, descended all the way to the ground, creating like this sort of dome of thick leaves. And so we were inside that, bringing all the rocks in there into the shade and underneath the tree. We started building, like natural Lego blocks with all the stones and making a semicircle and then adding the branches and talking about it. And they started saying, "Oh, we can come live out here. This would be amazing. We can build 20 forts in these mountains, Dad. We can do anything we want out here." So their imagination started to light up, and it was just awesome to watch. And the question is, how much did that cost? Was a big planned event, going on a big trip or buying them these things? What? No, it was free. It was an investment of time, and it was amazing on my end. I just had so much fun. I felt like a kid again, going out there and building those forts or building that fort. And it just made me think about this sentence here that I wish I could show you a picture that I took, because my 2-year-old, my 5-year-old are sitting there and the smiles on their faces, like glowing, just full of love and excitement and happiness. And that's going to be an experience that we can remember that brought us closer together, created connection and growth in our relationship as father sons. And I actively chose to go do that. Before that was on the couch. It had been a long week, and I just laid down for a few minutes and I felt like taking a nap. I felt like just taking some time to just relax. But I said, no, I've got the energy to go do this. I know this would be amazing for them. Let's do this. And even though I was tired, got up, got in the car, got them loaded, drove out to the mountains. And the energy that I felt in return from that greatly exceeded the fatigue that I had prior. It enlivened me. And I believe that if we as fathers can make those decisions to go make those experiences happen, big and small, I think oftentimes it's the small, simple things that yield the greatest return over time, that we will be given energy from those experiences. Because when we live our purpose, it fuels our positive ego. It fuels all of those characteristics and traits that come from living right. And I experienced that. It was amazing. I mean, so go build forts, go skateboard, go ride bikes, go do these things. If your kids are older, find some things that you love to do with them and do them. Because in conclusion, the feeling that I felt after that is the concluding point that I want to make here, which is I felt a desire to make as many of these experiences happen as possible, because I felt like time is so short. And I don't want to look back on, my son's 5, 6, 7, 8, those 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. I don't want to look back at those 18 years, or 19 years, or however many years I have him in the home. I don't want to look back on that block of time and have any thoughts of I wish I would have done that with them. I want to leave no stone unturned in that area. And I know that the cycle of growth that happens from that is it builds on itself. That builds momentum. So go build momentum. And even if you haven't done it in a while, or you're feeling like you don't know what to do something. Take action. Don't wait around. Don't wait for conditions to be perfect. Don't wait till you have the energy to go do something. Do it anyway. Invest and create those experiences of growth and connection. And that's going to be a key element of leading with integrity with your family. So I'm excited to spend more time discussing our purpose as fathers. The next two elements, provide with consistency and protect at all costs, are amazing. And I'm excited to talk about those two and live by them. And I know that you can, as you seek to be a better father, experience joy, peace, and motivation, and a surety that you're on the right path. There is no more important role for men than that of husband and father on this earth. And that's what's going to strengthen by living up to that role and seeking that's what's going to strengthen us and our families to be able to be successful in our current world. So with that, thank you so much for listening and spending some time with me. I'm humbled that you've listened to this, and I'm looking forward to growing this movement, the Full Strength Father movement, and providing resources and motivation and inspiration for fathers all around the world. And until we meet again, until we speak again, live free or die.